Mission First Tactical is the official tactical accessories provider for the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for an exclusive 20% discount on all orders.
Hey, Lead. Welcome back to another episode of the Talking Lead podcast. Appreciate everybody tuning in. If you didn't get an opportunity, make sure you go back to our previous episode where we did a SHOT Show recap. And I thought it was a pretty good show. Learned a lot on that. I didn't get an opportunity to attend, but we had attendees, people that did attend that. I think we got a couple of them on this episode also that were on the past episode. Yeah. But if you guys have been following the social media, you know what this episode is about. I've brought together a very special panel for this discussion. It's probably something that I should have done years ago to talk about this, but no time like the present, especially with some new happenings and what's going on. So the topic of the show today is we're going to be talking about the military COVID vaccine mandates and the effects that it had on the military personnel, the ones who took it, the ones who didn't, refused to get it, the discharges that subsequently happened. And then, as we've all heard with Trump in office, he issued an executive order offering reinstatement of those military men and women. So broad overview, that's what it is. It's going to be a great topic, great conversation with the panel that I've got. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start introducing everybody. And I'll start at the bottom this time. On my screen from the bottom, we've got, ladies and gentlemen, the Coop, Ryan Couperis with the Reason Outdoors. Ryan was a sergeant major, or not sergeant. He was a gunnery sergeant. I was looking at Lance when I said that. He's a gunnery sergeant, the United States Marine Corps, highly decorated combat vet. He received the Navy Commendation with Valor and a Purple Heart, among others. And Coop he served before, I think, the mandates, but we're going to get a perspective because I think he's still been friends, and with the Reason Outdoors, he's around some of these military men and women that were part of that. So, Coop, welcome in.
Thanks, brother. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Also joining us is the Pimp Hand of America, the host of the very popular podcast, Student of the Gun. Been doing it almost as long as I have, if not longer.
No, you got like what? And 3 months on me.
That beat you by 3 months, but you were doing TV prior to that.
Yeah, we were doing television in 2010, 2011.
Yeah. So you were on last episode with us, so we appreciate you being on. But Paul has a military background as well. He's a combat decorated United States Marine veteran, also the founder of Student of the Gun University, and has been teaching small arms and tactics and military personnel, police officers, and citizens over 3 decades. He's also a well-accomplished author, has many books out. He's got a new one out, too. We're going to let him talk about that a little bit later. But Paul, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I didn't say the years here, but Paul is like an OG. So I wanted to get an OG's perspective on this too and talk about how things were done when he was in service. So,
okay. You want to know when I went in?
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us.
I became a United States Marine in 1987.
1987.
Yes, sir.
And when did you retire?
Oh, I didn't retire. I got out of active duty after Desert Storm, and then I had my midlife crisis early and went back into the reserves during the battle days of the Clinton administration uh, prior to 9/11. So I had two honorable discharges all before 9/11 happened. And when it happened, my wife was all freaked out. She's like, "Oh, they're going to call you back." I'm like, "No, they're not. There's plenty of people. They don't need me." And I ended up actually during GWAT working as a military contractor for some time. So
Very good. And then also joining us, he's new to the show. And Zach, do you want me to say your last name? Or just Zach T.
Oh no, that's fine. Yeah, Tharp.
Okay, so Zach Tharp, he is a United States Marine Corps Force Recon, 17 years of service, unvaccinated. So, Zach, tell us a little bit more about your time in service.
Well, actually, me and Coop, we deployed together. He was my first team leader. We were in combat together. Towards the end of my career, when the mandate came out, I was the course chief for the Marine Corps Method of Entry program, the Breacher School. So I ran that school out of Quantico, Virginia. Leading up to that, several deployments. I was a scout sniper as well. So yeah, we'll get into it further, I'm sure, but I ended up unvaxxed, forced to go different avenues through exemptions, appeals, different cases, forced to take a very reduced retirement in the route that I went. So I'm retired at a very reduced rate. That was my only option.
That. Yeah, we're going to get into that. So appreciate you joining us. It looks like I've got Marines on here, but trust me, I did try to get other branches, and this man stepped up for us. Brandon, do you want me to say your last name, or do you just want to leave you at Brandon?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Brandon Armstrong, he is 6 years in the U.S. Army. He's a sergeant. He was deployed in Afghanistan, and he did get the jab. So, Brandon, welcome in. Tell us a little bit more about your time in service.
All right. Yeah, I started off in the reserves. I was at the time doing full-time firefighting, EMT work, and Army said, "No, we need you full-time." So ditched that life and went active duty. Shortly into my 6 months there, active duty time, got orders to go to Afghanistan. Got to do that for a year in the height of COVID, which was an experience unlike any other, not to mention the nature of deployments, but dealing with the mess of the the heat of COVID there. So did that and got back to a couple more years, and I figured I'd try and get out while the getting was good and see what else was out there for me.
Exploring the world. Also joining us and I wanted to get a perspective from a foreign service member, and this guy's been on the show before. You guys know him, you love him. Lee Jackson. Lee was a British Army engineer, a sapper. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
14 years with the prison service, Her Majesty's Prison Service. I guess it's His Majesty Prison Service now.
6 years. 6 years with the prison service.
6 years.
I didn't do enough to for 14. I'd rather stay away from that as much as I possibly can.
And during that time, you honed your skills as a canine handler.
Yeah.
Lee is also an author. He wrote The Canine Executive, Unleashing Canine Expertise. We talked about that on a prior episode. And Lee and I had a great adventure yesterday. I made a post a little bit earlier today, kind of teasing that. We're going to have Lee and his group on to talk about the special project that we did this past weekend. But I am honored that you guys invited me to be a part of that. It was an awesome time. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it was a pleasure having you.
Good times. And then, ladies and gentlemen, making his triumphant return to the Talking Lead podcast. It's been a while since we've had this gentleman on, but he has been on in many past episodes. So you longtime lead heads are familiar with Sergeant Major Lance Nutt with Sheepdog Impact Assistance. Lance has a storied military history. I'm just going to leave it up to you to highlight your military career there, Lance.
Well, I don't like to call it storied, but it was a long period of 30 years, and
that's pretty storied.
I think it's one of those where I got to gunnery sergeant. As I heard the gunny on there, that's where I planned on stopping. I always dreamed of being a gunnery sergeant, wanted to be the gunny, and somehow the Marine Corps talked me into staying a lot longer than I'd planned. But I also grew up in the Marine Corps. My father was a Marine Corps naval aviator. I was blessed to have him swear me into the Corps the year before he retired. And
Awesome.
So kind of like growing up on a farm, I didn't know what else to do with my life. I was surrounded by our nation's heroes as a young man. And so joining the Corps seemed like the smartest thing to do. So 30 good years, and it was my Marines and sailors that I served with that made it 30 good years. So proud of the men and women that I served with and the opportunity I had to serve with some amazing people. And I came in 88, so a year shy of our elder on here, and came in 87. And I retired in 2018. About a year and a half before COVID really ramped up, but I was still heavily involved in advising young Marines at that point in their careers, and so yeah, a different perspective. You know, I go back and think of as we get into this, you know, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and having to take anthrax pills and an anthrax shot, and all the controversy that came with that back in that time. So I'm excited to see how we delve into this conversation with COVID, because there's a lot of similarities in different ways.
Yeah, very good. And the reason that I wanted to have Lance on was because of his leadership status, the command status, and perspective from that. And then also, I think Lance is going to get into ramifications of following orders, not following orders. So that's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to delving into that with you. So did I miss anybody? Did I get everybody? Got everybody?
Got everybody.
Got you all. Very good.
There. Our product, CLP Plus, is a bio-based, non-toxic, complete gun care. Your cleaning time will be reduced by over 50%. I like to say it's a clean shoot, clean shoot, clean shoot for it to fully remove whatever product you've had on there before. It's like seasoning a cast iron skillet. So all I like to do is you'll field strip it like this, go piece by piece. Basically all I do, I'll take the nylon brush into the paste and you start covering. Come back, clean each piece, and then even on the handles, on the outside and on the inside. With our product, you wipe it all off. You don't leave any on there from grains and all, stick it in. It's safe on all metals, plastics, composites, wood, rubber, leather. I just use a nylon brush and then a bore jag with one of our pre-saturated patches. You put it in, swipe, coming back, you can see what it's pulled out. And this was a brand new firearm. With our product, your malfunctions from carbon buildup are virtually eliminated because carbon will not be building up. There's nothing to stick to. And all of our product is USA source and made. Grab the microfiber cloth and back and you'll wipe it off, and you'll wipe all the product off now. There you go. It's that simple.
Seal One is a proud sponsor of the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for a 25% off discount.
So I guess how we should kick this off is just let me get into these mandates, when they were just a general overview. So the military vaccine mandate is in August 2021. The Department of Defense issued a mandate requiring all active duty and reserve service members to be vaccinated against COVID-19. The deadline for compliance was set for mid-2022, with the understanding that service members who refused the vaccine without an approved exemption would face administrative action, including potential discharge. Consequences for noncompliance. The DoD stated that refusing the vaccine could result in administrative separation, meaning the service member could be discharged from the military, often with an other than honorable or general discharge, depending on the circumstances. There are some specific cases and reports. The U.S. Navy reported that several sailors were discharged for refusing the COVID-19 vaccine. In total, over 1,800 sailors had been separated from service as of the end of 2022 due to non-compliance with the vaccine mandate. Most of these discharges were administrative, and a majority of the separations occurred after sailors failed to request or were denied a medical or religious exemption. The U.S. Air Force faced discharges for refusal to comply with the vaccine mandate. By the end of 2022, more than 8,000 Air Force members were either discharged or pending discharge for not following the vaccine order. The Air Force initially gave personnel the option to apply for religious or medical exemptions, but many of these requests were either denied or were not submitted by the deadline. The U.S. Army reported that hundreds of soldiers were either discharged or being processed for separation due to refusal of the vaccine. Similar to other branches, the Army offered medical and religious exemption options, but enforced strict deadlines. Soldiers who did not comply with the mandate, had their exemptions denied, were subject to discharge proceedings. And I didn't get a number for how many in the Army. They didn't give me a number for that. The U.S. Marine Corps was one of the most stringent branches, with more than 3,000 Marines either discharged or under review for refusal to get the COVID-19 vaccine. The Marines reportedly had one of the highest rates of vaccine refusal among the military services, and the service moved quickly to separate those who chose not to comply with the vaccine requirement. Sounds like the Air Force had more to me from what I just read in this article.
Well, what's the total Air Force personnel versus the total Marine Corps personnel? Marine Corps is a relatively small branch.
Yeah, maybe they're talking percentage-wise. Yeah, could be. There are some major legal battles going on. Some high-profile cases have involved legal battles over religious exemptions. One case involved the Air Force, where multiple airmen filed lawsuits after their religious exemptions were denied, arguing that the mandate violated the religious freedoms. These legal challenges are ongoing in several courts at the time the mandate was lifted. And that's the thing, too. The mandate was lifted in 2022, December 2022. U.S. Congress passed a defense spending bill that included a provision to end the COVID-19 vaccine mandate for military service members. Following this, the Pentagon announced that it would no longer discharge service members for refusing the COVID-19 vaccine. However, those who had already been discharged or were in the process of being discharged for vaccine refusal were not reinstated. Some service members who were discharged for refusing the vaccine might have faced challenges in their post-military careers, which is what I want to hear from you guys, depending on the nature of their discharge status. A discharge other than honorable or general discharge could potentially impact access to veterans' benefits, future employment opportunities, and other post-service rights. By 2023, it was reported that approximately 8,000 to 10,000 service members across all branches had been separated for vaccine refusal. This number was a relatively small portion of the overall military force, but it reflected the tensions around the mandate and its enforcement. As the mandate was lifted, there were discussions around whether those discharged for refusing the vaccine might be reinstated, though no such actions were formally taken as of early 2023. Additionally, some service members who were separated with less than honorable discharges explored the possibility of appealing their discharge status. And that is until Trump was elected, and he made an announcement, and he made an executive order And I'm going to read that, and I'm going to share this tab. And did that come up?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So this is word for word the executive order, January 27th, 2025, by the authority vested in me as president of by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America. It is hereby ordered. Section 1, Purpose and Policy. On August 24th, 2021, the Secretary of Defense mandated that all service members receive the COVID-19 vaccine. The Secretary of Defense later rescinded the mandate on January 10th, 2023. The vaccine mandate was an unfair, overboard, and completely unnecessary. And imagine Trump saying this. Do it in his voice. Do it in his voice. Unnecessary burden on our service members. Further, the military unjustly discharged those who refused the vaccine, regardless of the years of service given to our nation. After failing to grant many of them an exemption that they should have received, federal government redress of any wrongful dismissals is overdue. And then it goes on. Consistent with the policies announced in Section 1 of this order, the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of Homeland Security, as appropriate, shall take all necessary action permitted by law to make reinstatement available to all members of the military, active and reserve, who were discharged solely for refusal to receive the COVID-19 vaccine and who request to be reinstated. B, enable those service members reinstated under this section to revert to their former rank and receive full back pay, benefits, bonus payments, or compensation. And C, allow any service members who provide a written and sworn attestation that they voluntarily left the service or allowed their service to lapse according to appropriate procedures, rather than be vaccinated under the vaccine mandate, to return to service with no impact on their service status, rank, or pay. That one's huge. That's a big one. Section 3, additional agency responsibilities. Nothing in this order precludes disciplinary or administrative action for conduct that is prescribed by Chapter 47, Title 10, United States Code of Military Justice. And that's a big thing. There's a lot in that. But basically, let's see. The Uniform Code of Military Justice is a federal law that governs the discipline and legal proceedings within the U.S. Armed Forces. It applies to all members of Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Space Force. I should have got somebody from the Space Force on here.
Good luck.
Is there anybody?
Too busy putting candy floss in their ears.
There you go. Key areas of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The Uniform Military Code of Justice outlines criminal offenses in the military ranging from minor infractions like absent without leave to major offenses such as espionage, desertion, and murder. Court martial, the UCMJ establishes court martial, which are military courts used to try service members accused of violating military law. And punishment, the UCMG provides guidelines for punishments, which can include anything from non-judicial punishment, such as Article 15, to incarceration, dishonorable discharge, or even the death penalty in extreme cases, though it is rare. Do they still put people to death? I guess they can.
They can. Technically, they could.
Okay. And it goes on. Key articles, rights of the members, service members, enforcement implementation. I could read all that, but I'm not going to. And let's see, within 60 days, this is back to the executive order. Within 60 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall report to the President through the Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs on their progress in implementing this order. If any of the provisions of this order or the application of any provision to any person or circumstances held to be invalid, the remainder of this order and the application to any other persons or circumstances shall not be affected thereby. And general provisions, nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect: 1, the authority granted by law to an executive department, agency, or the head thereof, or 2, the functions of the director of the Office of Management and Budget relating to budgetary, administrative, and legislative proposals. 2B, this order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations. I think we got plenty of appropriations if we quit sending shit to Ukraine. This order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any part against the United States, its departments, agencies, or entities, its officers, employees, or agents, or any other person. The White House, January 27, 2025. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but there's a lot to unpack there too. So I guess what I'd like to do now is just kind of go around the table and just get everyone's, I guess, maybe perspective on these. Let me get back to my screen here. There we go. The mandate, the lifting of the mandate with no action or anything by the government, and then this executive order. And we've got one person who took it. We got one person who did not take it on here. And then we've got everybody in between here. So I guess what I'd like to start with is probably Lance and your discussion, you know, because talk about the vaccine mandates. I mean, when you join the military, there are certain rights that you're giving up.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough conversation all the way around, right? So, because, you know, I also run an organization that is made up of military men and women from every service, generationally, all over the map, first responders, obviously, that were impacted by this as well.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, my time in service and growing up in it, you know, there was one thing that always kind of stood out and was supposed to make our service members very unique from a war fighting standpoint is the importance of good order and discipline and following orders. And I can remember as a young Marine, I go back to what I mentioned earlier with anthrax. As a young Lance Corporal and getting ready to deploy to the Gulf, and even when we got there, you know, taking a plethora of shots that they were inoculating us with, you know, to prepare for deployment, and the thought of getting hit with chemical weapons and of every type imaginable, and one being anthrax, and having to take an anthrax shot and getting there and having to take anthrax pills. And I don't remember. I remember it being in the media. Obviously, it wasn't such a hot topic with everyone because only military personnel were being made to take it, right? So it didn't have the breadth of COVID when you had civilians being told to take it as well. But, you know, the one thing that stood out to me as I can remember all of us arguing about whether we should take it. Was at the end of the day, we were being told to, it was an order, and we were supposed to follow orders. And that was kind of the end of the discussion. Now, people continued to bitch, moan, and complain about it, but it was still what we had to do.
Right. And Paul, do you want to interject on something there?
You just sparked a memory. I was with 6 Marines over there, and we were one of the first units to arrive in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and so on and so forth. And we got issued the little foil packets of anthrax pills. And when we got hit in Kuwait, and they told us, they said, everybody take your pills, right? So we actually weren't in Kuwait. It was the Battle of Khafji. Anyway, during the Battle of Khafji, they told us to take our pills. And so it was dark. Everybody took pills. And people started saying, like, dude, my hands are shaking and my heart is beating and so on and so forth. And my foil packet of anthrax pills is buried in the desert outside of Kafji. I took one pill and that was it. So, and I completely forgot about that until you brought it up.
You know, you're bringing up, you know, this tells our age, right? I was down at the Port of Mashab, just south of you, there at Kafji, because we were in support of the Battle of Kafji. So, to your point, that's exactly right. That's when we started having to pop pills, and you know, sense of urgency at that point. And I think half of us buried them and half of us took them, and I fall into the group that took the damn things. So yeah, it's one of those memories and the thought of just, you know, following orders, right? And I know before we came on, we were talking a little bit, and I wanted to share an unfortunate episode of, some of y'all may remember 2020, you know, 5 years ago when the amphibious warship USS Bonhomme Richard caught fire in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring that up because there was a big investigation done on the ship and it catching fire, and it ultimately was destroyed based on this fire. But the investigation showed that the reason the ship was lost was because sailors refused to fight the fire. And
Oh, wow.
So when you think about that, and again, there's a lot of parallels here of, you know, the risks associated with following orders. And so if service members get to this point, as debatable as the COVID shot is that, you know, if I don't like the order, or I think I might get hurt in following the order, so I'm just not going to follow the order. What ramifications does that have on us as a fighting force, right? If we start to create this precedent of, and now I say all of this that I want to go back and add that I did not take the COVID shot, but I was also out of the Marine Corps and I had a choice. Whereas you go back to the politicization of the COVID shot and, you know, everything that was tied into administrations arguing and fighting, and Fauci, and just the politics of it all flowing over into the lives of our military men and women. I still go back to my biggest concern, and that has to do with the argument of whether or not to follow orders. And someone, I think you brought up a minute ago about, you know, if you don't follow orders, there was a time when they could take you out back and shoot you. Now, obviously, that's not the case anymore, and I'm not condoning that in any way whatsoever. But between the option of I'm not going to follow orders and they're going to take me out back and shoot me, or I'm not going to follow orders and I'm going to be given the option to get out, which is what everyone was given that decided they didn't want to take it. You could argue that that's a pretty fair option. Is I don't want to take the shot. You can let me out of the military, and you go from there. Because there's also that bigger debate, and when you talked about the numbers, we're arguing about or discussing who did not take the shot. That was a very small percentage based on the numbers that said, yeah, I'll do it because I want to stay in. I want to keep my benefits, etc.
But that's the thing too. I mean, how many did it under duress? You know, it's like I
no,
can't
absolutely
afford to not.
Most of them did it under duress.
Yeah,
exactly.
But,
I mean,
but how about Lance Corporal Nutt, who took his anthrax shot because his sergeant said, you're going to do what the F I tell you to do, right? That's duress, but that's what we do in the military. Everything is under the threat of my sergeant's going to whoop my ass, or I'm going to have my rank taken away from me. That's the life of a military man or woman. Everything ultimately is under duress. So my argument is, at the end of the day, again, as a very slippery slope, when we start to get into this debate, I go back to the ship that was destroyed because sailors just said, I I don't want to risk my life putting out a fire.
Do you know why? Was that the reason? Is they didn't want to risk their life putting out a fire? Or was there another reason?
Oh yeah, they did a huge investigation on this, and the ultimate cause of the destruction of the ship was not the fire. The fire did damage. And what they decided was the fire, if it had been responded to properly, now there was a lot of layers there. There was blame on the commanders and the senior officers and enlisted that they say didn't train their sailors properly, right? So in not training them properly, they set them up for failure and saying, hey, I'm not going there to fight that fire. But the bigger picture is across the board. Whether you're trained properly or not, the argument is, well, if I just don't feel safe or comfortable, you're right, I'm just not going to do what I'm told to do. So
Sure.
I am on that side of, and I'll kind of end it on this. Again, I get it. I'm 100% against the shot. But at the end of the day, you got to follow orders and do what you're told. And if you say no, then there's going to be ramifications. And you've got to determine whether you want to live with that or not. And so I advised Marines and sailors after I got out that asked me for my opinion. And my recommendation is, well, if you want to keep what you've earned, then I recommend you do what you're told to do. And if you're being told to take the shot, then you take the shot. I spent 30 years taking a lot of shots.
Sure.
It's not the same, though. It's not the same.
I would say,
I think there's the debate, right?
There's no debate. There's a mountain of evidence of vaccine-related injuries and death. It's not the smallpox vaccine that we got when we went to kindergarten in 1972. And it's not a fucking vaccine. It's an mRNA fucking. It's not even a fucking vaccine. We've lost control of the language.
Yeah.
To say it's a vaccine is a fucking lie.
Coop.
Yep.
Go Coop.
I agree. With anthrax, right? I got anthrax vaccine or vaccinated before we went to the invasion of Iraq. You know what? Because I'll tell you, Saddam, had that stuff. And that probably is not a vaccine either, to be honest with you. But that I was more scared of getting hit with a stinking, nuclear biological or chemical weapon than I was of that vaccine. But this, number one, is not a vaccine. Number two, I would say that the sailors on that ship, right, they all deserve to be captain's mast and NJP'd for not doing their job, because every person in the Navy is a firefighter, and they all have multiple stories about doing that. That is their job. That's what they should do.
I went to firefighting school.
Correct. However, so I think the commonalities between the vaccine and that ship is that the failure is at the top, right? Senior leadership, right? Senior enlisted leadership and senior leadership failed our service members in every branch of the service.
Because the information was out there. The data, the facts were out there, but they were being ignored.
Absolutely. And after the first year, I want to say 2022, right? There is one batch of solid statistics, and that came from MERS, the Military Medical Readiness System. When that came out at the end of the year, and there was a spike by 350% in miscarriages, 350% in cardiomyocarditis, 1,000% spike in suicides. There's a lot in relation to that, obviously, right? As soon as that came out, Terminal CWO and a couple other pages started reporting it, and they tried to delete it from the system. They knew that they were harming service members, and they continued to do it anyways. It's not a vaccine. The whole thing was a freaking scam. And senior leadership in the DOD let it happen willingly, without ever questioning, is this the right thing to do? Why? Right? Because you don't have to obey a lawful or an unlawful order.
Unlawful order.
Right? This is terrible what happened to people who had to get out, got shoved out, people who now, people. I got a buddy who has seizures now out of nowhere. Oh, perfectly healthy.
Because after the shot, and there's story after story about that. And what I want to do is I want to go to Lee next, and I think it was great points that Lance was making about the order aspect of this in the military, and if you don't follow orders, and people are going to die typically, and he's
not wrong on that.
Being in the British Army, the British military, I'm sure they have similar policies over there, don't they, Lee?
Yeah. So first, I'd just like to say, guys, I hugely respect everything y'all do here. I've worked closely with quite a few outfits, 101st Airborne out in Afghanistan. Worked with them, so I really appreciate what you guys do and what you've been through. Now, obviously, coming from a different military and a different culture, different government as well. Unfortunately, the UK is very woke. It's very left, or it's going very left as we go through the modern day. But back when I was in, obviously we didn't have COVID. Back when I was in, I joined in 2006, and I left back end of 2011, just short of 6 years. And for us, the mandatory vaccinations were literally childhood vaccinations, unless we were going to be deployed. Now, if we were being deployed, and when I was being deployed to Afghanistan, my mandatory vaccinations then was everything, along with yellow fever, typhoid, you name it, meningitis, hepatitis, and luckily there's been a lot of research behind that, and these vaccines have been around for a lot of years. Now, when COVID hit for us in the UK, they actually they mandated it for the healthcare and social system. Now, people might think, well, how does that impact the military? Well, the military has a healthcare and social system within the military. So medics, doctors, dental nurses, anybody within that medical system got put under the mandate for a mandatory COVID vaccine. And I was looking at a release of public information. I'll try to send you the link, Lefty.
Okay.
Trying to send you the link right now. It was a public release of information for how many service members had refused the vaccination. And obviously, the British military is nowhere as big as the United States military. So the numbers are very much lower in general. But the mandate, not the mandate, sorry, the request for freedom of information, as of 10th of December 2021, 885 regular UK Armed Forces personnel had read the code for declining a COVID-19 vaccination in their electronic medical records and did not have subsequent record of receiving a COVID-19 vaccination. Now, again, I wasn't in the military at the time COVID hit, but I had a lot of friends still within active units serving actively, and I was told they was ordered. They was ordered. You need to take this. It wasn't a government mandate. It was coming from the top. You guys need to take this. It is something you've got to do. It's there. You've got to take it. And they also
were they applying more pressure than normal for this to be done?
Yeah, the system in general was applying more pressure across the board within the military. For to the guys, they were you couldn't go to the bars, you couldn't go to what we call the NAF. Y'all know NAFIS or PX or down to the boardwalk like we were in Kandahar or whatever. You couldn't go anywhere unless you had this COVID-19 vaccination. You couldn't go anywhere unless you had your COVID vaccine passport. to say that you were vaccinated, and they wouldn't let you leave the barracks. They'd literally confine you to barracks. So that's some of the stories. Now, from my perspective, and again, I took the vaccination because I had to take the vaccination. Otherwise, I couldn't move here to America. America had put a mandate on foreign countries.
Yeah, that's a whole nother bag of.
If you wanted to come to the United States, you had to have the COVID-19 vaccine. So my whole livelihood now is in the United States. I live here in the United States, and my whole livelihood is here. And that was all dependent on me and my wife having the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, and you bring up a point, and that's a whole nother topic. There are people that lost their jobs, just civilians, and we haven't even talked about the law enforcement and first responders that lost their jobs, that refused to do that. All the businesses that were closed. I mean, it's just this mass devastation to people economic wise.
Remember though, you only had to have it to come into the country legally.
Yes.
They never required the illegals to prove. They opened the gates as soon as he got into office. They opened the gates, they opened up the borders and let them start flooding across. And they didn't give two shits about those people's vaccination status.
Vaccination or not vaccinated. And here's the thing, I had to go through a whole process of proving that I was vaccinated. I had to have a whole letter. I had to have a doctor's note, and have it all signed off and everything. But that's another story. But just touching on what Lance was saying regarding, the orders and that, and a little bit of my opinion. Again, I'm not going to really comment on your side of stuff, your side of the house, because I don't think that's fair for me to do that. But I do agree with Lance to some perspective, to some length, and with orders, because at the end of the day, as a soldier, follow orders, a lawful order, as we've already said, because if we don't follow a lawful order, then people die. Now, where I'm going with this is, my opinion is, like, the principle of the boat and the COVID vaccine is similar, but the outcomes are completely different. You are fighting on a boat. You are fighting a physical threat that you can see, and we know the outcome of it, that you will get burned or potentially die, smoking inhalation, etc., etc. And we know the result of that because there's hundreds of thousands of years of evidence of what fire does to people. There's no evidence. Oh, sorry, I said there was no evidence. We had nothing at the time for COVID-19 when the vaccine, when it first came out. We've got tons of evidence now supporting it.
No, in the United States, we had evidence. Dr. McCullough, there were doctors that were saying, don't take this shot, do not take these. My mom is a retired nurse, and she sent me a message. She said, they're going to do this under no circumstances are you to take that shot.
I understand that, and I should have kind of worded what I wanted to say a little bit different. What I'm saying
is, we understand what you're saying.
It will like the substance was there, but it weren't being allowed to be there.
It was being suppressed.
It was being suppressed
by the government.
And
yeah.
Which then the ideology then changes. The outlook on it then changes for everybody. Because for me, if I don't know about something, I knew deep down the COVID-19 vaccine for me wasn't the right thing. I now suffer with headaches, and I never did. I suffer with palpitations, I never did. And the only thing that's ever really changed in my life is that COVID-19 vaccine.
Yeah.
But can I blame it on that? Probably. I don't know. But it's like, I did not want to take it, but if I wanted to be successful in what I wanted to do.
Well, I think once they get more case studies, then they're going to be able to point back to, that was a direct cause or it wasn't a direct cause, but time. It's all about time.
As time goes on.
Yeah, and as time goes on, I want to get to our other guest here. So, Lee, we'll come back to you. Did you make the main point you wanted to make?
Yeah, good.
All right. So, now what I'd like to do is get in with Zach and Brandon and talk about their experiences because they were serving during this time, and Zach chose not to, and Brandon chose to. So let's start with Zach. And Zach, let's just
So I've been sitting here trying to organize my thoughts.
Sure.
Just so I can get the verbiage that I want to get out there without sounding
take your time. There's no rush.
Overly aggressive. We talk about and I heard it. That's all I heard because I was still active. I'd been a gunnery sergeant 5 years. I was running the method of entry program, the entire Marine Corps breacher school. I had the backing of my monitor to go participate in the Congressional Fellowship on Capitol Hill following this set of orders.
Oh, wow.
And all I kept hearing was, you have to obey orders. You have to obey orders. We have people saying right now, if you don't obey orders, people die. Well, if you obey unlawful and incorrect orders, people die.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't it wasn't much before the vaccine mandate that individuals at Kabul were given the order to not take a shot, leading to the deaths of Americans because they followed orders. At the time that we were getting eliminated for a COVID vaccine, the individuals that orchestrated one of the most incompetent operations in recent history were going unpunished. There was no repercussions. No one's being held accountable. To go with what was said earlier as well, illegals weren't being forced to get vaccinated. I received paperwork because I was the one running the explosive program that due to all of the Afghani refugees, unvetted Afghani refugees and unvaccinated Afghani refugees, that my training program might need to be put on a standstill. So simultaneously, while I'm being eliminated from the Marine Corps by my own government for not having a vaccine, they're bringing Afghani refugees unvaccinated to live on the same base, to have access to military family members and their children. Department of Homeland Security had put out a memorandum saying that they were very concerned about a 20-year retaliatory, I don't know if that's the word, attack for 9/11. These refugees were brought onto Quantico with nobody being advised, giving access to military service members, their husbands, their wives, their children on September 9th. So that's a big issue.
Yeah.
Going into unlawful orders, there was a lawful way to refuse the vaccine. I'm not with this new executive order. I don't agree completely on reinstating everybody because there was a process that could be used. I counseled many Marines on doing it the correct way. If you blatantly said, I don't want it, I'm out, that's going to hurt your case. But I did my religious exemption. And mind you, it's a religious and strong personal or religious and personal belief exemption.
Well, he does have that section C in there that says allows any service members who provided a written or sworn attestation that they voluntarily left the service or allowed their service to lapse according to appropriate procedures, which I mean, maybe that's the got you right there. Rather than
that would make sense because now I put in a religious exemption along with 4 other individuals when I was there. Myself, another Force Recon Marine, 2 EOD techs. They blanketed, the deputy commandant blanketed a basic denial and just swapped the names on it. And within that policy, the services are responsible for conducting their own due diligence to explain why each individual exemption cannot be facilitated. That was never done. That's why there's lawsuits in place. That's why there's federal injunctions in place, because they unlawfully denied the exemptions that would have allowed people like me to stay in. Once denied, you only had 10 days to file a formal appeal. That was not in any of the paperwork. It just said you need, if you disagree with this, you need to appeal directly to the commandant. I did my formal appeal. And in that appeal, I spoke about how, because the denial was, well, we need to maintain a force, have to be able to deploy at a moment's notice. Well, that was all fucking bullshit. And in my appeal to the commandant, I asked them, why are the pregnant females in the military who are only requesting a medical extension to get the vaccine after giving birth to their children being denied? They're not deploying anytime soon. They're not even asking to not get the shot. They just don't want to get it while pregnant. There's no evidence, there's no research, and there's nothing stating that this is a safe vaccine for somebody pregnant to pass on to their children. They were denied their exemption. They were denied their medical extension. So right there is proof enough that this had nothing to do with being ready to deploy. Why were military members that were at their 19 and a half year mark with an approved retirement date going on leave, obviously never deploying again, being told, if you don't come back and get the vaccine, we will kick you out prior to your retirement date? That had nothing to do with deploying. So at this point, this order is an unlawful order. So for myself, at this point, now I'm doing the appeal. My appeal was completely ignored by the Commandant of the Marine Corps. I never heard anything back. Based on all this, I was being told day in and day out, you're the problem with the Marine Corps. You're a coward. You won't get a vaccine, let alone take a bullet. Well, that's cool, because I've been blown up, and Coop was with me.
Fuck those pieces of shit.
Well, and I told them that, right? They said, hey,
fuck
what
them.
is your plan now that you've ruined your life and your career? I said, well, honestly, once you take everything from me, I got one thing to do for the rest of my life, and that's fucking ruin you. And I'm still working on those avenues. I'd love nothing more to get put in a position to just start stripping these people, because they're cowards. It is the responsibility of the senior leadership to look out for their junior Marines, or all Marines, right? Obeying orders. We can say it all day long. You have to obey orders. Well, what happens when you're given an order to launch an AT-4 into a house known to house nothing but women and children, but your squad leader's pissed off that day? If you launch that AT-4 and you kill nothing but innocent civilians, are you getting charged? You're just following orders.
Fuck yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
There's this thing called the Nuremberg Accords.
You're supposed to be this brainwashed instant obedience to all orders is bullshit, because if we follow every single unlawful order, we're getting charged. So would we not want a military service? Do we not want military service members who are intelligent enough to question orders? Or do we just want a bunch of brainwashed, no concept of critical thinking skills going out there and blindly obeying the first person that has a bad day and wants you to mow down a bunch of women and kids? Because there's plenty of individuals that have followed orders, killed the wrong people, and they are suffering for the rest of their life. Now, I took a different route. So I started padding my medical records so that at least when I lose everything I've ever worked for, I'll get my VA disability. At that point, I was being told, well, you might also get charged with domestic extremism because you're wearing a mask that says freedom doesn't look like this. They didn't like my FJB edition on my truck, which I told them just meant freedom, justice, and brotherhood. But yeah, they didn't buy it. So I wasn't just looking at getting separated. They wanted me gone. And I was told day in and day out, they will do what they need to do to get rid of people like me, because people like me are what's wrong. So
that started during the Obama administration, the purge. You're part of the purge.
Well,
that's what the shots were.
We talked about the purge, right? And well, I did in a different conversation, but this was just after Kabul, when service members are coming back and starting to look inward. Like, okay, there's no one's being held responsible. That operation was, you have people like General Milley, who had to explain why he was on the phone with the Chinese, saying he would warn them against Trump. But then at the same time, when he was asked, how did you allow such an abysmal operation to occur, leading in the deaths of civilians and military service members, he said, it is my responsibility to advise but not question.
There you go.
Looking up the purge that you said there, Paul, to see if it comes up.
So the purge, right? So now you got a lot of military members that are looking inward and starting to question the government. At the same time, when it seems as though there's this global push to eradicate anybody that might have the balls to say, hey, that's unlawful and I'm not going to do it. So all of a sudden we have a COVID mandate that just like that can eliminate people like myself from the DOD, because I won't blindly obey. You can eliminate them from your public education systems. Anybody that's responsible for
Police departments.
So here's what comes up when you search it on the internet. It says possible misuse of the term misinformation or conspiracy theories. Some conspiracy theories or misinformation campaigns have used dramatic language such as purge to refer to false claims about COVID-19 vaccines causing harm, population control, or unsubstantiated outcome. These claims are not supported by science.
Mm-hmm.
In this sense, may refer to the unfounded fear that vaccines could lead to deaths, sterilization, or harmful consequences. However, there is no scientific basis for these ideas. We're still getting this from the internet.
I use the term purge as the ability for the U.S. government to get rid of anybody that won't blindly obey.
Well, not just the U.S. government.
Obama started that.
This was a worldwide issue too. I mean, this wasn't just the United States. This was
imagine coming up with a fake vaccine that doesn't work, that gets rescinded as a way to remove everybody from your public education system that won't push an agenda, your public health care, your police forces, your first responders, your agencies within the government, and the Department of Defense itself. And you put out a vaccine that can get rid of each and every person that questions any kind of authority and won't blindly push government agendas onto other people.
Let me ask you this, Zach. So after discharge, and you were discharged, is that right?
I went through, and I had to go through a medical process to get found unfit, which they found me fit because they said that they, with all my injuries from top to bottom, my naval special warfare was gone. I need numerous surgeries. They said that because I had stated in a mental health note that I hunt and fish to relieve stress, I can clearly work. Because the day they found me fit for service, I could be kicked out. Couldn't be kicked out while I was on a med board. So I had to appeal that, and I had to take that to a formal appeal case. So what ended up happening was I was found unfit. I was able to trade it in for a reduced pension, which is making me $1,400 less a month for the rest of my life, which if I only lived to be 68 years old, 30 years of lost out pension, I'm looking at nearly $400,000. And that's being conservative, but $400,000 simply because I am was unable to make it to my 20 years based on their policy. But now what do? I can't come back in. And this order right here, this executive order is fucking bullshit, because what they're saying is if you want any kind of compensation for what we unlawfully did to you, you need to accept our apology and serve us again. Where's the payout for the people that don't want to be reinstated because they don't trust the government, or the people that had to move on with their life? They now have wives, they have husbands, they have kids. They bought a house, they started a business, they're in college. Or that the only way that they're going to get compensation is to give up the life that they were forced to start from scratch because of the government completely fucking them. And there's no payout unless they agree to serve. Now, right now, they're offering federal agents out the ass 8 months of pay to simply resign for being useless to the U.S. taxpayers. Is there going to be a payout for those veterans that are unable to come back? I can't come back in. I got tattoos everywhere now. I am unable to come back in, nor would I ever serve a government that did what they did to me and so many other people. And now they're saying, oh, my bad. We're sorry. And we're only going to make it right if you serve us and obey us again. Well, fuck you.
Zach, was it you and I that were discussing the recruitment numbers being down, and this was a kind of a way to get the...
Oh, yeah. I mean, up until recently, it was very obvious. Recruiting numbers are just...
Yeah, and I want to talk about that. So remind me, I want to bring that back up. But I want to go to Brandon. What'd you say?
The recruiting numbers spiked in the last couple of weeks since Trump's been inaugurated. I mean, surprise.
Yeah, I mean, that's recruitment of its own.
Introducing our new belly band holster. Whether you're hitting the gym or running a quick errand, our belly band is one of the most comfortable and safest ways to carry your firearm. The center section allows you to carry most common pistols. Left or right-handed, this has you covered. A hard laminate trigger shield protects the firearm's trigger from unwanted intrusion, giving you ease of mind while carrying every day. 2 elastic sleeves give you the flexibility to carry other everyday items, such as spare mags, flashlight, knife, or pepper spray. 2 zippered pockets run on both sides, offering the option to carry smaller items such as money, cards, or keys. Flush fit on your lower back or waist, easily keeping your setup discreet no matter how you choose to carry. Utilizing 3D spacer mesh, these channels allow for exceptional and efficient airflow, giving you maximum comfort and keeping you cool. Carry whenever you want, how you want, with our new belly band holster. Available now.
Mission First Tactical is the official tactical accessories provider for the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for an exclusive 20% discount on all orders.
I want to get to Brandon now, and I want Brandon to talk about his story, his side of it, where he was given the same option as everybody else, but he chose to take the shot because of reasons. So, Brandon?
Yeah, so you don't have to give me the close up, Marty. That's a little too much for me.
Let's see that nice beard you got going.
No, there's too many other people here that look better than me. So ultimately, I was in the Army as a medic, and like all of you, in 2020, I hear this thing start going around of, hey, so we're going to be looking at a lockdown. We're going to be looking at staying home for a short 2 weeks. Everyone do your part. Everyone be a good boy, a good girl, and serve your neighbor, look out for everyone else around you, and just stay home for 2 weeks. And I, from that very moment, said, yeah, that's a load of crap. Like, it's never going to happen. It's going to be much longer than 2 weeks. Everyone called me crazy. Then I'm sitting in my barracks room for 2 months, and told not to leave. DFAC is having to shuttle us in food, which DFAC's already bad enough. You probably experienced it. So that's not working. You want to talk about force readiness and maintaining a deployable organization when you have buildings of soldiers in the barracks that aren't being fed, they're not being taken care of, they're not allowed to go to their appointments. So that's what I deal with for about 2 months. And finally, we get to deploy, and what a breath of fresh air to say, wow, I'm finally going to a foreign country where I don't have to deal with this shit. Yeah, that's not the case either. First thing that happens, we hit Kuwait. Myself and a friend of mine are getting ticketed by military police officers for not wearing our mask outdoors while walking to the showers. Holy shit. So you want to talk about force readiness and setting the standard and everyone being available and being able to do their job. Well, you've taken 2 MPs out of the game to corner us off for an hour to write these citations, draft up the paperwork, and then taking 2 medics out of the game that could otherwise been at the aid station or getting their guys ready to get on their next flight to Afghanistan. Get to Afghanistan, 2-year specialist, super stoked, super excited, like all soldiers are, especially in combat arms. And a medic like me that was hoping to get the title of doc. That was all I ever wanted. That's all I ever heard. Long family history of military service, and my grandpa was special forces and told me that that's the title I needed to pursue. Get to our first fob there. I hear over the radio that during a direct fire attack, there's some VBIDs, some couple IEDs, and lots of incoming mortar rounds. Hear that a lieutenant has been shot in the neck. It's like day 3. Let's go. I know how to do this. I got it. I'm walking out of my aid station there with everything I need, and this cherry LT says, "Where is your mask?" Oh my God, where is my mask? Yeah, that's exactly what I need here. So forgot, not the bullets flying, not the rockets flying, not the explosions going off. None of those are of concern to my health. It is the mask on my face. Grab the mask, go back to doing my job. Then we spend 2 months there of someone gets a sniffle, someone gets a cough. Well, they automatically have to come in. They automatically have to get antibody tested, meaning you draw their blood, you put it into a little fancy plastic piece, and it says, yep, lo and behold, you have COVID. So now instead of spending my time, training up my guys on combat life-saving abilities, working my physicians and doctors on pertinent medication training, trauma medicine training, I am sifting through their close contacts, their friends, their family, anyone they've God forbid, texted or called to get them PCR tested. So I have a line out my door in Afghanistan of my aid station, drawing everyone's blood, and then we send them off to a COVID prison camp. Don't see them for 2 weeks, leave them up to, I think they were likely an Indian contract group there, locked inside a gate. We're only allowed to check on them every 3 days, show up, test them every day, every 3 days, until they finally get a negative test and they're released. So that's how it all starts there. And then we start to hear, so yeah, there's going to be a vaccine, and it's going to be on a volunteer basis. We're recommending it, but nothing's mandatory yet. And I just had my reservations, and I said, well, thank goodness it's not required because I'm not getting it. And then it turns into, well, any doctor, any medic, any mental health provider, any of the MPs, anyone going out on patrols, they all need to have the vaccine. Any mission essential people. And then it starts running through my mind and a lot of other people's minds. Well, what if we just say we got it? What if we just write in our vaccination card? Well, then you start seeing these people that have done it and they're being sent to prison, or their titles are being stripped from them. So we say, that's probably not a good idea. So what are our options? Well, you either get redeployed after only being in country for 3 months. You will lose your job. You will be kicked out. It will be dishonorable. Or you be a good boy and you take the shot and everything's okay. And I mean, what a decision for me at the time, a 22-year-old, to make is the very thing I've trained up for and heard about from everyone I've looked up to most, something worth giving up for, in lieu of getting this vaccine. And I really battled with that for the longest time. And with just myself, I had a physician with me and a couple other medics. One was a platoon sergeant, one was a junior medic. And I said, I just can't leave these 300 guys of mine without me. There's people that depend on me. And got it, knowing damn well it's an mRNA vaccine. Take it. Wasn't administered by anyone in the Army. It was flown in, given to an Air Force team that were solely tasked with giving it to everyone. So there's a continuity of where it goes, who's it going to, so on and so forth. And then I spend the next 3 days just in the middle of Afghanistan heat, freezing to death. I mean, in my chew, 4 blankets, 2 sweatshirts, heaters on, and I just cannot get warm. Yeah, it's this happens with all vaccines. Come on, man. And I'm just racking my 6 years of medical knowledge and understanding of all the vaccines. I was going through basic training. It's like cattle work there. You get 10 at a time. I was never that sick. I did a PT test that day just after getting those shots, but I was called crazy for that. And then I shortly after, I redeploy and end up going to the hospital, very sure that I had myocarditis. The imaging that was taken there very much proved that. And I asked if it was attributed to the COVID vaccine. Of course not. It's not the vaccine. Well, how unfortunate that I'm 23 now and I just miraculously got myocarditis. That sucks. Pretty crazy. Then I'm just watching, Chief Warrant Officer 3s. Yeah, I'm watching Chief Warrant Officer 3s, majors, lieutenant colonels, sergeant first classes, sergeant majors that just say, you know what? Screw it. And they just up and threw their retirement away. And and at that judgment call they had to make was, do I subject my guys to this? Do I say, you need to listen to what I say. I'm going to do this for myself, so you have to do it. Or do I take the only other option, which is I take myself out of the picture? Because what's a leader like that supposed to do when they say, yeah, I don't want it, but you guys should get it? You're only doing what your guys should do, or what only doing what for yourself what you would make your guys do. So watch a million people, not a million, but dozens definitely piss away their retirement just because they didn't want to make that decision for themselves or force that upon their guys. And I mean, props to them. And that's my hope with this order is that, what about the people that lost everything, and especially what about the people too that caved, and they've taken it, and either one, they're okay for now, or two, they have conditions from this. It was so politicized, and you see it across, exclude the military, but when have we ever seen a vaccine that subjected people to losing their jobs, stop them from being able to travel, stop them from having the freedoms that they are guaranteed? We have never seen that ever. And you take the military out of the picture, that's the case in point here, is people threatened with their livelihoods, to shutting down of their businesses, strictly for either taking it or not taking it. And that's kind of the problem I see. You talk about the media, sure, they have a large presence there, but the military is for so long just been treated as this guinea pig, this social experiment. And this was just another one of those things of, what can we get people to do? And more than anyone, the military was targeted first with this, and they're gonna, it's gonna be us to experience the long-term ramifications.
So you had mentioned something there, and Paul mentioned it in one of his discussions there. And when preparing for this show, I interviewed a lot of different people, and a lot of them were reluctant to come on. I tried to get some people that were currently enlisted, and they all refused, just fearing the repercussions of being on the show and talking about it. But I did hear more than one story about, like you were saying, Brandon, the commanding officers being in this situation of, we know
the moral dilemma.
The moral dilemma of, I know this is bad. I don't want to give it to my troops. And what some of them did was they gave them saline. Did you and I talk about this also, or was this? I know I talked about this with a couple of different people, but they gave them saline shots and recorded it as the vaccine shot, and they went out, Paul, and they buried the vials.
Well, and that's kind of what I was wondering too, because I'd heard about that, and that was right around the time where we were starting to get them flown in, and there was a tier list of who was getting it first, and medics were probably somewhere on the upper end of the rung, but not at the top.
But I wonder, because nobody's ever going to come out publicly and admit that, I'm sure. But how many of those cases exist to where the CO's like, okay, you guys got to get these shots, but they replaced it with saline versus the actual.
Yeah, that's what the politicians did.
So they did quality control. All right, so our 18 Deltas at our unit, any shot that I've ever been given in my career was given by one of my 18 Deltas. All of a sudden, they weren't allowed to administer this vaccine.
Yep.
Only certain individuals could, and it had to be reported, and there had to be witnesses. They were so hell-bent on ensuring that this vaccine was given that the procedures that we typically went by to get our vaccines were redone, because it was just, they were so scared.
Because they knew they were poisoning you.
Yeah. They knew
they knew they were poisoning you.
When it came down to, the yearly flu shots that everyone needed, that I got the batches, and all my guys came in and they got them. And you can imagine the apprehension of simply getting a flu shot after, being forced to get this COVID shot. Wait, do I need a flu shot? But still, given the flu shot, I've received many myself, haven't in 3 years, but used to get them on that routine basis because I was forced to. And maybe I do know a thing or two about the flu. It's been around for a while. And then hear that they're coming in, and I'm thinking to myself, shoot, this means I'm going to have to, get not only myself, but everyone that's a part of my force vaccinated. And then it's, actually, no, there's a different attachment that has no relation to you that is going to be handling the sole, handling of this medication and the administering of it. And then we get,
trying to eliminate
over there
situations like
that, where you hand jam something in, or you draw it in the syringe and you shoot it out the side and then just stab them once. There was no options for that. And, unfortunately I had to make that choice for myself, which really sucked. But for better or worse, I didn't have to, not only make that choice for myself, but bestow that choice upon every single person I stabbed with the shit, at the orders of people far above me.
Yeah. And you talked about the after you got the jab, you got sick. There were things that happened to you that, didn't seem normal, so the effects of the shot. And again, you don't know if you can contribute to the shot or not, but odds are it probably was from the shot. Lee, you talked about things, health-wise that happened to you because you took the shot. Zach didn't take it. Paul didn't take it. Coop, did you take the shot?
Hell no.
Coop didn't take it. I didn't take
Absolutely
it, so
not.
I can't speak to that. Lance, did you say you took the shot?
I did not take it.
You didn't have to. Yeah, you were out, so you didn't take it either. So,
And Marty,
countless. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
let me, and I want to add something because I do want to go back, and I've enjoyed the debate, and I do want everyone to know that I came on here with an agenda of, I knew all of us could come in here and fight against the shot, and we're going to make the point, right? And so I said, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to approach it from a debate standpoint of us thinking outside the box when it came to is it a lawful order? Is it not? What's the importance of following orders, not following orders? But I want to share with the team real quick that I couldn't agree more with a lot of what's been said on here tonight about what our government has done to us, because I want you to know that I now spend a lot of my time through our organization fighting what our government has done to the men and women I've served with. Now, the challenge is right now, we're not dealing with any cases where we're fighting for men and women who are suffering from the COVID vaccine or whatever we want to call it. What I spend my days now fighting for are men and women who are dying from burn pits and suicide because they're not being treated properly at the VA, and you name the list, right? So,
and Lance, I don't want to cut you off, but that is another reason why I wanted to have you on here is because of the suicide. And I've talked about this with a couple of different people too when I was interviewing for this. And Zach is a perfect example of this, of all the bullshit and stress that they've had to fight for and go through because of they didn't take the vaccine. It's not necessarily that they had the jab and they got sick with the jab. They didn't get the jab, but they're still going through mental anguish because of all the bullshit that they're having to go through to fight for their benefits and pensions and all this. And I guarantee you that has led to, and that has upped the suicide. And
no, without a doubt. And that's part of my point, right? Is, I mean, I'm focused on the bigger picture of what our government has done to screw our servicemen and women, and the COVID is just the tip of the iceberg, right? My company Gunny from my last deployment in 09-10 is currently fighting throat cancer, and he's never smoked, chewed tobacco, or anything, and they've documented that it's from burn pits. So the bigger picture argument for me is not COVID, the COVID shot. It's what our government is doing to our men and women. And now they fooled the civilian population with COVID, but they've been screwing over our men and women in uniform, for millennia here. And it goes back to, well, if you sign on the dotted line, you raise your hand and you swear to, follow orders and you go into the military, there's the risk that, yes, you may be asked to follow an order that you don't agree with. And the question I was having is, okay, well, what's the potential ramifications of that if people just randomly start deciding in the military, I'm not going to listen to you no matter what it is. Now, that's a different debate that I wanted to add to the conversation here.
Sure.
But I want to make sure that everyone understands that my fight is about the travesty of what our government is doing when it comes to lying and setting people up for failure, whether it's Agent Orange in Vietnam, mustard gas in World War I, COVID now, you name it. It's an inadequate level of education, preparation, supply of gear and equipment, you name it, and then the mental health side of it, of why our men and women now are killing themselves, whether it's because they didn't take the shot, or they're not being dealt with, or with the deserved medical care, etc., that they have. So I wanted to just make the final point from my standpoint that I love the debate. I love the argument. I think everybody's spot on their points. And for me, though, it is that bigger picture of, at the end of the day, our government is fucking us. And it's a level of, where do we start holding our politicians, especially our politicians, accountable? Because me as a sergeant major, I thought I could trust my leaders, and more importantly, our government, to give me advice that I could set my Marines and sailors up for success, and to learn that, no, they were lying to me. And then in turn, I was by default lying to my men and women. That's what's unforgivable for me, is that they put me in a position to give bad advice and to encourage things like the COVID shot, when in reality, now I know that I failed them because I believed what I was being told, right? So that was just the kind of caveat I wanted to add to that, now that I've heard such.
And Lance, I had joined in a little bit early, with you and Marty. I kind of had a chance to hear just a little bit about what you had planned on speaking of, and I kind of knew where you were going. So I appreciate your insight. And I think the important thing with your conversation there initially is that you've played both sides. We have known where you stand on the whole issue here, but you have spoken to, the reality of this is that, there was an order in place, and, orders are meant to be followed. Now, my question here, and what I just haven't been able to wrap my head around for the longest time, is, especially now with this, this mandate coming out where everyone can come back, is that, so it's order for everyone to get it. You either get it, or you're losing your career, your retirement's being screwed, your religious exemptions are being denied because maybe you're not actually religious. I think you've just had a random pattern of misconduct miraculously, and we should probably just discharge you anyways. And then suddenly now we're back to, well, yeah, sorry about all that. You're welcome to come back. So how is this order ever lawful and appropriate in the first place, if now with a new president and a change of policy, everything's okay now? No, you don't need the COVID vaccine. You're welcome to come back.
They lied.
Guilt.
They knew they were lying. They lied, and they knew they were lying.
Yeah.
Well, and until the American people hold those people responsible, which may never happen, I don't know. We may never. With these blanket pardons and this Fauci horse crap, Fauci should be on the end of a rope. End of story. Actually,
surely he's not guilty if he got a pardon without being charged for anything.
A preemptive pardon that goes back.
Surely he's done nothing wrong.
Backdated pardon.
So they gave Millie one of those too, right? But
they did.
Millie is subject to the UCMJ. Does that pardon cover the UCMJ? Because if it does not cover the UCMJ, Millie's fat ass needs to be in Leavenworth right now.
Good question.
What a piece of human shit that guy is.
Yeah.
What a fucking disgusting piece of shit.
That's a good question. And how do they propose to figure all this out if people do want to get re-enlisted and the back pay and all this? I mean, I ran some just basic numbers just to see what the numbers that we're looking for, and based on the 8 to 10,000, if every one of them wanted to get reinstated, it's still only it's less than $400 million. Which, how much have we given to Ukraine?
Billions,
and there's $100 billion
in Israel.
There's $100 billion unaccounted for what we've given to Ukraine. This is a drop in the bucket to, even if they don't I mean, there should be something set up for our military men and women, some counsel. There needs to be some counsel to guide them on how to navigate this new executive order. And the best way to do that. And
Well, and that's a great point, Marty. And I mean, if you run the basic numbers here, let's just take a standard specialist, E4 equivalent pay, based. I've only been out since 23. It hasn't been too long, so it hasn't changed too much. Likely, they're making roughly 2,800 or 28,000, a year. You say there's 10,000 people that somehow got discharged. Of course, playing devil's advocate here, that's 288 million. And you run the numbers on how much foreign aid we've given to. I mean, not even. It doesn't even have to be foreign. You see that.
I'm
not sure if you've seen recently, but
this
just
US
aid in general.
bullshit that they.
How much money did Chelsea Clinton get? Did you guys see that bullshit?
78 million or something.
84 million.
84 million from US aid.
But a $3 million wedding, a $10 million home. Yeah.
Yeah.
My point exactly. $500 million to try and make recompense with our military men and women is a drop in the bucket, and it's not nearly enough. It falls way short. And
we're still so early.
And that's if all we're going to do is say accept our apology and take some money, but no one's held responsible. There's no punishment. There's no repercussions.
People got to hang.
This means nothing, because all this proves to the next administration, 3.5, 4 years from now, when something happens and the government decides to just overreach and overstep, that if they were to be proven wrong, no one can get in trouble. This is just going to set the precedence, the precedent's been set for decades, that there will be no repercussions for pushing government agendas on the civilian population and the military. Going off of, one of the big highlights. I don't know. Is it Brandon?
Yes.
Brandon.
You spoke about when you watched it. This wasn't just, I don't want to get a vaccine. This has to do with Benghazi. This has to do with Kabul. This has to do with our supposed oath about defending the Constitution against all threats, foreign and domestic. Well, that's what I grew up in. I left high school at 17. I had to get parents to sign a waiver so I could leave high school and skip most of my senior year. At 34 years old, everything that I thought that I was fighting for overseas, protecting the American citizens and their rights and their constitutional rights, I'm not watching my children have their school stripped from them. But I'm still paying taxes to the school. And when I asked the local my local government where that excess tax money is going now that they're not running buses, electric, so on and so forth, that money was just it was distributed throughout the county as deemed fit. Kids, childhood was taken from them. No sports, no graduations. You were still expected to pay your taxes, but you couldn't go to work to make the money to pay your taxes. The only law you were breaking was trying to go to work. At the same time that you couldn't go to this is a health pandemic, but you couldn't go to a physical fitness center to increase your health, but you could stand in line for your liquor and your tobacco and your cigarettes.
You go to McDonald's.
This was a health pandemic, but you were going to get free French fries if you just got the shot. So it goes, we talk about, I would say the darkest days of my life was when everything that I believed in for 17 years was thrown in my face. I watched the American population's constitutional rights just stripped from them at the wave of a pen with executive orders that never even passed through any kind of legislative, process. But anybody at any time could just completely dismantle our Constitution. But I'm supposed to sit here and just continue to do it. The biggest threat to my children and my family at the time was not overseas. It was the U.S. government, what they were doing. Now, Lance,
Amen.
I appreciate your stance on it because I love playing devil's advocate. That's why I said there were means to do this the right way. If you did just say, I'm not getting it, well, did you do your exemption? Did you do your formal appeal? If not, then you disobeyed an order. But there were ways and policies to do it the correct way. And if you did it the correct way, like I did, by the time I was done, I was being given an unlawful order. So it's different.
But there should have been someone there counseling them at that time also to say, all right, if this is the path you want to take, here's the proper procedure to do it.
Oh, well, I did that for my people, but I was told that I I was told that I was.
You weren't doing it in an official capacity, you know.
No, what I was doing was I was trying to force Marines into defying an order, which would get myself in more trouble, because I was actually counseling them the appropriate way to do things per the DoD's policy. And it's not, again, not just a religious exemption, it's a religious and personal belief system. And I had to go get counseled by a chaplain who questioned me. He said, well, you have no preference as your religion. So what makes you think you can get a religious exemption? I said, well, it's also belief systems. But at the same time, we just said that the Taliban were the good guys and our friends, and their religion said that if they kill enough of me, they get a bunch of virgins. So if we're going to recognize their religion and recognize them as the fucking good guys all of a sudden, then I don't care if it's a dinosaur. I said, do you know what my strong personal belief system is? I strongly personally believe that shit's not going in my body. And he signed my paperwork, and my exemption went in, but it was denied, and it was unlawfully denied.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to this, and there were so many other people that I wanted to have on here, and more stories, different stories. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue this conversation in another episode. But before we wrap this one up, I just kind of want to go around the table and make sure that everybody's, you know, made their points, talked about what they wanted to talk about, get out there. And Lance, what you do with Sheepdog Impact Assistance is, I mean, it's a godsend what you guys are doing to help not only the military, but also first responders, law enforcement. And, you know, it sounds like maybe this new fight that you guys have done is new, because I don't remember us ever talking about you guys fighting for, you know, like the causes of some of these health issues and whatnot, you know, like the burn pits and, you know, things like that. So it sounds like you are expanding your goodwill that you're doing with Sheepdog Impact Assistance.
Yeah, I mean, and I appreciate the opportunity tonight, Marty, and everyone on here, all of you. Thank you, one, for your service and your sacrifice at so many different levels. All of you are you're heroes to me, and so I appreciate you, and especially the continued fight that so many of you are making. But yeah, Marty, we, you know, when we started as a young organization, you don't have a lot of lead in your britches, and so there's not a lot you can do. But you also don't I was still serving in the Marine Corps when we started the organization, so you know I was still on another fence. But what has really bothered me over time is, as I've grown and matured, and the further I get away from the service and can see that bigger picture, is the failure at so many levels, and it starts with our government, to what has been said, not being held accountable. So that's as we've grown into a national organization that does have more influence, one of the things we're working on is holding politicians accountable. And one of our fights that has become personal for me is burn pits. And that's why I say, for me, I got out before COVID, but burn pits are what's killing.
You had a whole nother issue. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, burn pits are killing a lot of the Marines and sailors that I've served with. So far, it's 13 that of men that I served with personally that have now died from burn pits, and 3 of them killed themselves before, you know, the cancers and items that they were fighting could get them. And our guest speaker at our gala this year, Senior Chief Fleming, he is in the fight for his life right now for cancer from burn pits, right? So just the level of lies, and he was one of my corpsmen in the Marine Corps.
But see, this is stuff that the general public, you know, like myself, civilians, we don't know, but we don't hear about this. No, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this show, is because these stories are not out there. People aren't
they don't want you to know
firsthand account.
Yeah, they don't want you to know about it, right?
But we got to do an episode on the burn pits. I want to do that.
And I'll get Steve on here. I'll get, you know, Gunny Toscano on here. I mean, it's a travesty, but it all ties in, right? And that was my point. Whether it's COVID or burn pits, is the fact that we lie, our government, and then by extension, leaders like myself at different points. I lied because I trusted the sources that were coming at me,
Well,
And
you didn't
now-
lie. You didn't have the proper information. You didn't lie.
Well, that's right. I didn't lie intentionally. I didn't know I was lying. I was saying it's safe when in the reality it wasn't safe.
That's
right?
not
And
lying.
right.
So you didn't
well,
lie.
but I hold myself right.
Well,
I feel guilty because I look back on it in hindsight and go, I wish I'd done a better job of educating myself. But the point at the end of the day,
say we got to hold the politicians, and it starts at the
that's
politicians.
it.
It starts.
it.
No, it starts at us. It starts as us as the civilians elect
That's
and
right.
put these people in office. It's
Yeah.
our responsibility, and it's our fault for putting the incompetence where it is. Paul?
Every time when people say thank you for your service and we support blah, 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 I say, okay, cool. You want to thank me for my service? Stop fucking voting for Democrats. You want to thank me for my fucking service? Hold these fucking scumbags accountable. Don't just fucking blindly, oh, thank you for your service. Fuck you. You voted for a Democrat? You fucking voted for Joe Biden? Fuck you. Don't tell me you fucking thank me for my service, because those fucking pieces of shit treat us like a medical experiment, like a fucking Nuremberg experiment, okay? No, it's about allegiance and about fucking holding people accountable. And so when people are like, yeah, I'm done with it. Don't fucking tell me, oh, I appreciate your service. Oh, you voted for Democrat? Fuck you.
Lance,
That's what I say.
Oh, sorry. No, and you're right. You're spot on, brother. Lance.
No, that was it for me. Just, I appreciate everyone that's out there fighting, and
well, we appreciate
what
you're doing for the community, and I think you and Coop could probably collaborate on some things with Coop's The Reason Outdoors, ecotherapy. He came up with the term ecotherapy. Coop, talk about a little bit about what you guys are doing with The Reason Outdoors.
Yes, we take veterans and first responders and their kids out on ecotherapy trips, so hunting and fishing. Last year was our first full year as a nonprofit, and we took over 100 veterans, first responders, and their kids hunting and fishing in 7 different states, and all on a very minuscule budget. So looking to expand that this year. We're already off and getting hot and heavy on that. But I think these days, right? Like one of the reasons we're a little bit different than a bunch of other nonprofits that take folks hunting and fishing, and like you don't have to be a soft guy, you don't have to be a recon guy, right? If you signed that, you signed that dotted line, right, at some point in time, right, that could have, you wrote a blank check. So we take anybody. Any veteran, first responder, right? Because they all deserve some ecotherapy in their lives. But
Absolutely.
these days isn't like back when I first came in the Marine Corps, where they considered enlisted men, swine and scum, and we weren't the best and brightest, right? Today's war fighters are smart, and they're smart enough, right? Mainly, right, because they got technology at the tip of their fingertips. Back in the day, you couldn't just turn to your phone and look up a statistic or a study or what have you. We didn't have that, and the guys these days have it, and when you take wrongs that are being done to them, whether it's burn pits, right, Gulf War syndrome, right, the fact that 90% of the guys in a couple of my buddies' platoons that operate in Haditha, 90% of them have cancer, right? We take all these horrible things that happen to service members, right? You couple that with, the failure of the pullout, right? And, because as a kid, I always wondered, like, hey, how these Vietnam guys feel. Well, you know what? Our war was twice as long and the draw was twice as fucked up, right? Guys were serving in combat with their sons in the same dirt 20 years later, however many years later, right? And we look at that withdrawal and what happened, and it's nothing but betrayal. The fact that we're still paying the Taliban $42 million a week right now, right? That's a betrayal. That's spitting in the face of all of us who did go right and fight for the right reasons. right? For what we are, the American ideal right now. If I was going to go back, would I ever change any of it? No, absolutely wouldn't. I would still do it, even knowing that I'm just a pawn of a government that's going to fuck me in the end, right? And today's generation, they are smart enough to know that the government fucked them and the government lied to them, and that does a number to guys mentally too,
Absolutely.
That does a number to guys mentally. So ecotherapy, I found my healing in the woods. So I take other people to heal in the woods too, or on the water, either or.
Just out in nature.
End of rant.
Ecotherapy. I love it.
Ecotherapy, baby.
Paul, you've got a new book.
Well,
I
don't want to talk about my new book. I want to talk about the book that I wrote after I survived cancer.
Okay.
Called Fighting Solves Everything. Destroying Cancer with Faith, Nutrition, and Science. And please, it's available on Amazon. It's called Fighting Solves Everything. And I went through a cancer battle about 5 years ago, and I didn't die, so it was good. But I got a lot of good advice from really good people, and I was extremely fortunate to do so, because unfortunately what I found is most people, when they get cancer, they get terrified, right? You get cancer, you get terrified, you think, it's like a death sentence, and they just blindly do whatever the medical person tells them to do. And one of the things that cancer survivors understand is that most people don't actually die from the cancer itself. Most people die from the treatment, whether it's chemo or radiation. They die because their body is weakened to the point that it can no longer fight, and that's what kills them. And that's why I wrote that book detailing my experience and all of the really good advice that I was given, and the advice that actually saved my life. And it was advice like that helped me to know which people in the medical community were full of shit and that I shouldn't listen to. Because I know today, if I would have just been blindly terrified and gone into it without anybody in my corner and just done everything they said to do, I wouldn't be here. I'd be dead. So, yeah, you guys out there, you know people that are dealing with stuff like that. Please, send them. That's it. That's it. Fighting solves everything.
Paul has a plethora of books available on Amazon. You just put in Paul Markle and all his books will come up there. So check them out. Check him out. Lee.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've heard from you. Let me switch over here. So you also have a book. You're just listening. Do you have any final comments or points that you want to make?
I mean, overall, it's. I find it very interesting, the differences between, obviously, my country from where I'm from and the United States, and the mandates that were put in place, and how it ruined a lot of lives. And again, it's the old thing of for what reason? What were we in Afghanistan for? What were we in Iraq for? What were we, all that, and what is the reason? And it's mind-boggling to me that governments across the world are willing to go out of the way to destroy society, and society for what it is. And I feel that the whole COVID-19 thing was a huge social experiment across the world, a social experiment of compliance, to see, how society complies. And again, we mentioned being pawns in a huge chess game. Again, for what reason? I'm not too sure. but are we going to see some consequences from this? We're definitely already seeing consequences from this, especially economically and socially. And are we going to see consequences much further down the line with a lot more health conditions, which are then going to be related to the vaccine? Absolutely, I think that's something we're going to see. But overall, take me off big screen for a second. I really appreciate what you do, Coop. I'm a huge advocate of mental health, and same myself, Lance. I'm a huge advocate of it, and I've seen and personally been through some experiences, and I can see how it affects people firsthand. And what y'all do, y'all are my heroes, because that right there is the real deal. We're all good at what we do, otherwise we won't be sat here talking. And we've all got experiences and thousands of stories we could all share it amongst each other. But I think when it all boils down to it, is like Paul says, the only way we can even get anywhere with this is when society starts sticking together and coming together, and being realistic. Be realistic, and just that faith, having I say have the faith. Yeah, have your faith in God. Have your faith in yourself and trust yourself, trust your decisions, because at the end of the day, bottom line of all of this is your decision on what you want to do and what you do with your family. But yeah, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me on the show. It's been a great discussion. I've really enjoyed listening to what y'all have had to say. It's been interesting. Thank you.
And guys, you can go to Amazon, and Lee's book is there, The Canine Executive: Unleashing Canine Expertise in Executive Protection. Go there and show him your support.
And UK military is welcome in our ecotherapy programs too, bro.
I appreciate that, sir. I ended up shooting my first 9-point buck a couple of months ago, which was we don't get
awesome.
We don't get no whitetail in the UK, and I shot my first whitetail, and it was.
Did you get it where we were shooting yesterday?
No, I got it up in just on the border of Dixon and Montgomery County.
Okay.
We've got a place out there we go shooting. I actually got him with a muzzle loader, 50 cal muzzle loader, which were invigorating to say the least. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Some people like muzzle loading hunting. I don't care.
I enjoy the whole aspect of hunting. I think just getting outdoors. I'm a huge advocate for getting outdoors myself.
Sure.
Especially when I get to be with my two boys and teach them the skill sets, and it's fun. It's just It's
now you
good.
can't use your dogs to deer hunt in Tennessee, so don't do that.
I think can you in Arkansas?
I don't. You can use dogs? You're muted.
Sorry, yeah, you can hunt hogs, but not deer.
Not deer. There you go.
Well, the fun thing is, Tennessee's just allowed night hunting with thermal and night vision with a 12 gauge for coyote. So,
you can't hunt them with a rifle with thermal.
Not at night.
I've never done that.
It's got to be shotgun with. It's got to be shotgun with.
Never done
with buck or bird shot, but yeah, that's pretty fun.
More bullshit rules and regulation by the government. Zach and Brandon, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be on and share your stories. Talk about any last points that you want to make or get out there. And if you've got websites or businesses you want to promote, give them a shout out.
Take it away, Zach.
No, I mean, I would just say, going off of what Lance's initiative and push is, I think that's the most paramount at this time. We can talk about the COVID vaccine. We can talk about burn pits. At the root of it all, it is is the fact that we are well aware that we are being poisoned day in and day out, whether it's through the food system, whether it's through an FDA that knowingly adds ingredients to our food that makes us sick, but then approves the drugs to treat the sickness. Unlawful mandates across the board. It's, the topic of discussion is COVID-19 vaccine. Sure, bring some veterans in and throw them some money, but that doesn't do anything to fix the root cause of the issue, right? Like through the military experience, you're told to look at the situation, identify the issues, and then you fix the issue. If we just stop here and say, oh, cool, Trump's going to make it right by saying I'm sorry, and we're going to let some people in, that does nothing as far as weeding out the corruption that is currently the U.S. government and what they do day in, day out to military members, to Department of Justice, to teachers, to healthcare workers, to every civilian that was exposed to some kind of retaliation, whether it be the COVID vaccine or any other mandates at the time. So, what Lance is doing, I think is phenomenal. I think that's the way we need to go. Reinstating some people, great. But unless people are held accountable, then it means nothing for me. Nothing's been done. Nothing's being done. No one's being held accountable. And the corruption, the overreach, and as far as I'm concerned, the tyranny will continue within the United States. And it's very evident when the topic of discussion, when you get any group of veterans together anymore, you rarely hear people talking about their time in, and you don't hear the good. You don't hear people talking about, people don't get out and they're like, I'm proud of my service. I'm proud of this. And many people have, rightfully so, they should be proud of their service. But the topic of discussion is the issues within the government system and the issues within the DoD and the issues within the United States. And that speaks volumes on our current situation within this country and in countries around the world. I can only speak for this one. So the work isn't even begun to happen. The holding people accountable, making people pay for what they've done, whether, Marine Corps side, the deputy commandant that illegally denied exemptions. If he's not brought up on charges, if his pension isn't reduced, if Millie isn't brought up on charges, then what's it all for? Then we're really talking for no reason at this point. So Lance, I appreciate what you're doing. I would love to maybe talk with you offline, because I've got nothing but time and I've got a whole lot of hate and resentment that I would love to focus on making people pay. Because what do they do? As a military member, what's your job? Take the fight to the enemy, right the wrongs, eliminate the threat. Well, right now, the biggest threat to the United States is from within, I believe. And if people are once willing to go get shot in the face for someone overseas or step on an IED, but they're not willing to take the fight when the fight is coming from within, then I think we're missing a huge population of people that can affect change in a very professional and very adequate way.
Yeah. And before we get to Brandon, I just want to say that the reason how we got to Brandon to being on the show was his brother, Zane, was originally scheduled to be on. We were going to have Zane on, and he was a non-vaccinated individual. But I met Zane through the Reason Outdoors, through Coop. We went on a hunt together a while back, and Zane and Anthony, both great guys. Zane is having a baby, so that's why he couldn't make it. So we hope everything went well with the delivery. Have they delivered yet, Brandon?
Oh, I don't have any notifications yet, which is probably a good thing. He only texts me if something's going wrong. So
him and the wifey well and the baby. So we hope they do well. But appreciate Zane hooking me up with you and getting you on the show. It was an amazing story that you told.
Yeah, and I got to give Zane the thanks there first and foremost for putting me in touch with you, Marty. But I appreciate you having me on. I got here about a half hour early, and it was really just Marty, Lance, and myself, and just getting a chance to hear from Lance there initially about what he's planning on talking about. I was rapidly able to gauge kind of his outlook on this and what perspective he was going to take, just to really encompass, the embodiment of what Marty had liked to have this conversation to be. And Big shoes to fill here, gentlemen. I mean, Lance, Paul, Coop over there, Zach, y'all are the reason. Lee, I mean, you don't look much older than me, but your service says otherwise. You all are the reason. You all are the reason why, myself here, 26. I'm about to be 27, but still 26. Y'all are the reason why I chose, to go into the military. And as disheartening as it was to, experience this vaccine mandate on the back end there, y'all are the reason I went in and pursued what I did. So I appreciate y'all. Lance, Lee, Zach, Paul, Coop. I could have a conversation with either of y'all on the back end and really get more information out of you. Lee, I've served with a bunch of the UK members over there. Not a huge fan of the SA-80 personally, but I got to shoot it. I gave up my M4 willingly because I was thinking I'd get something better, and I don't know. Maybe I'll have to shoot it again.
It's an acquired taste, my friend. It's an acquired taste.
But
we did an episode on that.
Okay, I'll have to scroll through and watch
Just
it
like
there.
the first time you take that dirty pint, it turns out to be an acquired taste.
Shortest episode ever.
I got to shoot the British qual there with the SA-80, and definitely I'd rather shoot that than the US qual there, but not a huge fan of the platform. Otherwise, Coop, your reputation precedes you there. Heard a lot about you from my brother. Huge fan of what you do. My dad, he does his own outfitting business there. He does once in a lifetime hunts for people that are severely injured, terminally ill. So I have a lot of respect for what you do, and I appreciate what you're doing over there. It's a huge therapy that you provide, whether it's for people with illnesses, injuries, or someone that's just looking to escape their reality. And I think it's a loss, sense of reality that getting out into the outdoors, simply just stepping into the woods, may just be what you need to escape what you're battling internally there. Paul, Lee, I'm going to be buying your books. I already have them pulled up on my other monitor here, so those are going to be added to my collection. I've ran out of literature to read, but gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Zach, I wanted to talk more about the nature of this mandate here and what transpired, and you hit all the talking points. Ultimately, I think is this bringing people back in. Great, cool, that's awesome. If you want to come back, that's a opportunity if you're willing to take it. If you haven't built a business, established a family, bought a house, carried on with your life, what have you, but ultimately there will be no change unless those that inflicted this negativity are held accountable. And I appreciate your talking point there, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure, and I'm very thankful for this opportunity.
I couldn't have said it better. That was a great wrap up for this episode, and I do plan to continue this conversation. So if our listeners, if you know of someone or you are someone who served in the military, either you got the jab, you didn't get the jab, you've got a story to tell, you got a story to share, I want to hear from you. Email me, talkingled@gmail.com. And then you guys that are here, also Lance and Coop and Paul and Zach and Lee and Brandon, if you have other military brothers and sisters that you served with, love to get a female's perspective on this. We'd love to hear a female perspective on this. But yeah, I'm going to continue this, and there has to be some sort of support system set up for military men and women to take advantage of this executive order, or at least weed through it and know what the advantages, disadvantages of it are. I want to see that done too, and that's only going to be set up if we, the people, talk to our elected representatives, politicians, and demand it. But there are probably some organizations like Lance's organization, I'm sure, especially mentally, if you're anguishing over just anything, get in touch with sheepdogIA.org. They can help you guys. And then also, with the disaster recovery missions that they put together and do, they're you call them outdoor adventures.
Yeah, and I can plug the Facebook here into the chat. It's unfortunately ran by people a little bit older than myself. Love them to death. I'm trying to get involved personally, but I like to get a very solid website and what have you. But they're doing a lot of great work. It's not only the outdoor dream where we take people out with disabilities or terminal illnesses, but just offering guided hunts out there in New Mexico, doing a lot of archery, elk hunts specifically, but also muzzleloader rifle for deer, coos deer, what have you. So great opportunities out there. So check them out. It's really awesome.
Awesome. And then Lance, the sheepdog IA.org. Sounds like you might be able to partner with these guys and add to your outdoor adventures that you guys do.
Yeah, would love to. And if you gents haven't already, take a look at us, and I'd love to connect with each of you offline. I think there's a lot of overlap in what I've heard from each of you that I'd love to be able to share your stories, talk about your books and the things that y'all do. That for us, it's about a network. It's not about my organization being the beginning and end all. It's about us as a community. We all have something to offer, and that's how we make a difference, right? So I would love to plug into each of you offline and see how we can continue to support each other.
Yeah, everybody's working toward the same goal, so why not pool your resources and make a huge.
And that's the military thing, right? It's all about the man to your left and your right. So just because we're not actively in anymore doesn't mean we can't do that. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to touch base with you, Lance. I'm part of an organization called the Tennessee Rangers. We are a 501c3 charitable organization as well. We concentrate mainly in the state of Tennessee, operating in disasters. Recently at Helene over in Cook County, we were responsible for the recovery of the only 2 fatalities in that area, which is sad to say the least. But we was also responsible for multiple rescues, especially small children. One baby, we recovered a baby from a stranded house, which were really good to be part of that. So yeah, I'd love to connect with you on that and see if there's anything we can do to help, and vice versa.
Awesome. So I think we've served more than one purpose here. I think we're going to see some good things come from this with all you guys, and anything that we can do to help. And you notice my name, Dr. Edward Jenner. I put a different name up every episode, so that's kind of related to the episode. I don't say what it is, but you lead heads. There's usually a prize involved somewhere down the road, so be paying attention to my screen names that I'm putting up. Mission First Tactical, sponsors of the Talking Lead podcast. They made this episode possible. Make sure you go and show Mission First some love. Use the code LEADHEAD. Get 20% off anything at Mission First Tactical. We used a lot of their kit and gear for this little special project that Lee and Brian and I did this past weekend. So be looking for that. We're going to have more information on that. Seal 1 for all your gun cleaning, lubrication needs. Seal 1 and done. Use the code LEADHEAD. Get 25% off anything there. We're going to get Dwight, former Navy SEAL, on the show, founder of Seal 1, and they've got some new products that we're going to be talking about coming up. So a lot of good things with the show. And again, I love your input, talkinglead@gmail.com, the Instagram @talkinglead. PM us there if you've got suggestions for the show, guests you want on, anything like that. Love hearing from you, lead heads. But that does it for this episode, guys. Again, thank you so much, everyone that participated in this. Probably one of the more serious topics that we've covered, but I thought it very necessary. And going forward, we're gonna keep tabs on this and keep everyone up to date. So until then, as always, lead heads, keep your loved ones close.
Firearms closer.
Coop knows it. There we go.
I'm new here. I'll get it.
We're out. All right.
She said she made our thing.